Hello, and thank you for joining us, and welcome to Unpacking Proverbs 31, where we dig deep into Proverbs 31 and explore ways to practically incorporate biblical truths and principles into our daily walks of life. Today, we are unpacking Proverbs 31, verse 1, and it reads, "The words of King Lemuel, the prophecy that his mother taught him." That's from the King James Version. This verse opens up Proverbs 31, which is often put into a box about being about the virtuous woman or the virtuous wife. We're going to dig into this first verse to examine what's going on in this chapter before verse 10. Let's get started right here at the beginning of the chapter with verse 1. To better understand this verse, let's take a quick look at the historical context. Proverbs was written around 700 BC, approximately. The kings around this time were Solomon and Hezekiah. The author of Proverbs 31 is said to be Lemuel. Bible scholars such as Charles Eliot, Joseph Benson, Robert Jamieson, Andrew Robert Fawcett, and David Brown believe that Lemuel is another name for Solomon, as in Solomon, the son of David and Bathsheba. If that piques your interest, read more about David, Bathsheba, Solomon, and Uriah in 2 Samuel chapters 11 and 12, 1 Kings chapters 1 and 2, and 1 Chronicles chapters 2, 22, and 28. Let's pull out a few keywords in this verse. King Lemuel. Lemuel means devoted to God. The fact that he holds the title king shows us that he was a king devoted to God. He was a king under divine authority. When we accept the call to be devoted to God, our lives should reflect a commitment to his teachings and a desire to live according to his will. Jesus gives a clear depiction in Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 through 27. In these verses, he likens those who follow his teachings to that of a wise man who has built his house on rock. And when the rain fell and the floods grew and the winds beat on that house, it still stood. In Psalms 100 verses 1 through 8, we see David sharing of how devotion looks for him. He sings of mercy and of judgment. He says he will behave wisely. He will set no wicked thing before his eyes. He goes on to say, he will cut off those who will slander his neighbor. Those who tell lies will not dwell in his house. David knew the importance in his royal kingship to be devoted to God's wisdom and instruction. The next keyword we'll examine is his mother. This unnamed woman is beginning a dissemination of very important wisdom and moral guidance. There is value in parental wisdom. In 1 Kings chapter 2, David in his last days is speaking to Solomon. While David is advising Solomon, he includes this in his instructions, and I'm paraphrasing. Verse 2, "Be strong and show thyself a man." Verse 3, "Keep the charge of the Lord thy God. Walk in his ways, keep his commandments, his judgments, his testimonies, that you may prosper in all that you do." Here in this verse of Proverbs 31, this part of the verse says that his mother taught him to understand the nuances of the word taught. We can look at its original Hebrew meaning using Strong's Concordance. Strong's Concordance, reference number 3256, shows that the definition of this word includes to discipline, to chasten, admonish, to instruct, bind, correct, punish, reprove, reform. Teaching or being taught can be multifaceted, as we will see throughout this chapter. We see it in Proverbs 1, verse 8, and again a few chapters later in Proverbs 6, verse 20, the instruction of heeding parental wisdom in the form of father's commandments, instructions, and mother's law. In Exodus chapter 20, verse 12, the commandments tell us to honor our parents. During the time that Proverbs 31 was written, there was great importance placed on oral tradition and familiar instruction. The culture of the time makes it evident to us the ongoing influence of parental teachings as well as its value. Going back to the impact of King Lemuel's mother, we see that she is a spiritual leader in spiritual leadership of her son. The mother's role in the Old Testament has been likened by Bible scholars to that of the Holy Spirit that instructs, guides believers in truth and wisdom. Paul, in his first letter to Timothy, chapter 1, verse 5, commends the faith, unfeigned faith, that Lois, Timothy's grandmother, and Eunice, Timothy's mother, had. Paul tells Timothy that their faith can be seen in Timothy also. Women, in addition to their parental influence, make valuable contributions in the faith community. The last key word we'll focus on in this verse is the burden. The word has been translated in many ways in various translations of the Bible, all emphasizing the weight and importance of this God-given message. The Strong's Concordance at 4853 additionally defines it as tribute, porterage, singing, mental desire, chiefly a doom. This burden, as it's called, relays the significant weight of godly instruction, the weight of God's wisdom and importance. David is once again speaking to his son Solomon in 1 Chronicles 28, verse 9 and 10, and tells him, in paraphrase, "You know God, He knows you. He has chosen you. Be strong and do it." The Lord in Isaiah chapter 1, speaking to the rulers of Sodom and the people of Gomorrah, conveys his displeasure with giving what is easy. The burnt offering, the fat of the fed beasts, the blood of the bullocks, lambs, he-goats, incense, the feast. God is demanding, requiring that these people wash themselves, make themselves clean, cease to do evil, learn to do well, seek judgment, relieve the oppressed, judge the fatherless, plead for the widow. In Jeremiah 22, God gives Jeremiah a message to deliver to the king, to the house of the king of Judah. A part of the message says this: "But if ye will not hear these words, I swear by myself, saith the Lord, that this house shall become a desolation." God was displeased with his people. They had gotten away from his teachings, its seriousness, its significance, and importance. They forgot their responsibilities. We must approach God's wisdom with reverence and a commitment to apply it in our daily lives. Now that we've unpacked this verse, think about how unpacking goes in a very literal sense. You bring the boxes in from the moving truck, or you pick it up from the front door. You open the box, assess what's inside, and then pull it out of the box and give the contents a place in your home. Now, ask yourself, how can you take Proverbs 31:1 out of the Bible, and what can you do to make it so that it's a part of you, your space, your environment, your life? I encourage you to think about this verse, as well as read more about Bathsheba, David, Solomon, and the other scriptures mentioned. When we come back next time, we will discuss practical applications for the verse. Think back to how David showed his devotion in Psalms 101, verses 1 through 8. We will also take a step back and take a face value look at this verse, noting again King Lemuel and the prophecy that his mother taught him. Thank you again for joining us, and happy unpacking.